Hello everybody, and welcome once again to one of Carpo's rants. You can walk away now if you're scared. I am. I have a couple of things that I just wanted to get out there about the world in general, like always. Before I do, I want to start with another one of my words to live by out of the book. I flipped to a random page. I wanted a page that would associate with the video I'm about to do, and I found the one, pretty much right away. But it's within the league. And before I read that, I'd like to say that I appreciate all of your comments. I read every single comment that I get, and I don't always have the chance to respond to them because there's a lot of comments. And I knew it would get to the point where my channel would get that way. I never started this channel to get subs. I started it to meet good people, and I have. I've met a lot of good people, and through that it makes it really hard to respond. Somebody sent me a long message the other day, and I responded with, I read the whole thing, but I didn't have time to respond to it, and they said something to the effect of, at least, acknowledge that you read it, kind of thing. And yeah, I apologize for that, but I do read every single comment, and this is why I think that this is an important video. I think that each one of us has something to contribute, and sometimes I wonder, what am I doing for the world around me? How am I helping? I talk the talk, but am I walking the walk? And sure, I try to behave and do the best I can, but just being a certain way, is that enough? As opposed to acting and taking action. Somebody was saying the other day that philosophers should be leaders, and that goes back to the old philosopher kings, which it's the catch-22, is once a person develops a line of philosophy, they don't want to get into politics, and it makes it very hard to find people that are politically worthy. And if we had philosophers in Congress as opposed to 6,000-year creationists, I think that maybe things would be a little different, although I can't say for sure. I'm just going to read this briefly. This book has just little quotes and then sayings about them, and this one's kind of interesting. It's called The Promise by Herbert Agar, editor, author of A Time for Greatness. The quote he chose was, "After all, there is but one race, humanity." And the quote was by George Moore. And he goes on to say, "Every civilization rests on a set of promises. Moral promises about how to behave toward each other, physical promises about how to use our economic system. If the promises are broken too often, the civilization dies, no matter how rich it may be or how mechanically clever. Hope and faith depend on the promises. If hope and faith go, everything goes. We Americans have promised each other to treat our neighbors as equals. The promise rests on our old creed that every man has in him something of the divine, some spark of the eternal, which gives him as much right to be taken seriously as every other man. This is a noble promise, and from it has come our liberty," that's page 111, "and such democracy as we possess. But it must be expressed in terms of action, of something we can all do every day. Here is something definite which we can all do. We can do it without passing a law, without running for office, without founding a committee. We can do it on our own, without asking anybody's permission. We can start today by treating each other, rich and poor, Jew and Irishman, Mexican and Chinese, Negro and white, as if we believed in the basic promise, which is America." So no, I'm not really considering making a video here about America, but the part about how we treat one another I think is a very important factor, and I've been doing some really deep thinking lately about the system. I made a video the other day about capitalism, and I've been on this really long capitalism lecture. It's like, 38 hours long, or 18 hours. I don't remember how long it is. It's long. I think it's 18 hours long. But, it gets into some very boring yet very interesting concepts about the way that people have treated one another through history, through things like usury and loaning money. And by understanding economic models, you understand the general basis for which a society or a community to which values they hold and how much integrity they have based on, say, their currency. If a currency remains consistent and steady throughout many, many years, decades, centuries, such as the gold or silver standard, you can be assured that civilization is working all right. The minute that gold starts to go up to $1,500 an ounce, you realize that it's not the gold that's increasing. The gold's not going anywhere. It's that our money has been devalued to the point where it's useless. So this has happened in, for those who aren't aware, in Zimbabwe, they had a major economic collapse. And right before the end, they were printing trillion-dollar bills, okay? These were trillion-dollar bills. There were $100 billion bills, and I believe the largest bill they made was $100 trillion, okay? Now, it's a ridiculous amount, no doubt, but that's how confusing numbers can get when you start printing too much money. And it was a good example to the rest of the world as to what can happen to an economy, but it got to the point where I believe it was $100 billion for a loaf of bread or a carton of eggs. And of course, I don't want to get into economy here, but I was talking about the way that societies have collapsed by choosing. It reminds me of the Jared Diamond. He wrote a book called Collapse: Why Societies Choose to Fail or Succeed. It's a great book. He also wrote Guns, Germs, and Steel, which explains the whole idea of guns, germs, and steel. For those who haven't heard it, it's great, and they actually have a documentary. They made a show out of it, but the book's great. And it says that that the idea of history and how civilization has gotten to where it is based on mainly those three things: the idea of having guns or weapons to defend yourself, to create an army; germs, which wiped out entire populations, where we might think a civilization failed, but really they caught a disease they couldn't cure; and steel, the creation of steel, which people kind of underestimate the actual. People talk about the invention of electricity and computers and everything, but steel itself, learning metals, metallurgy, allowed us to produce gears and devices which could create machines. Without that, there never would have been machines. And this is why machines never existed beforehand. It's not because people hadn't thought them out. Guys like Da Vinci were creating machines in his mind that couldn't be made because the gears weren't strong enough. The systems weren't strong enough. We can put all this into action now. We have alloys that are unbelievably strong. And so this idea of guns, germs, and steel and how societies fail and succeed, it's not always a choice that a civilization wants to collapse. But it usually is the result of poor management. If I look at all the historical, what you might call superpowers or democracies, pretty much any culture, they've all collapsed because of their own misgivings. Even the ones who die because of disease, you have to understand how disease works. See, you notice how pets get a lot sicker these days. People always hear more and more about pets getting sick. Well, the worse an area is, the more animals that are in an area, the more sick animals get. We know this. This is because they're more exposed to one another. It's an obvious thing. It's just like when you get the flu, in flu season, they say avoid outdoor, avoid other people. And in a society where it's fly to this place and drive to that place, if one person caught a disease that could wipe out humanity, and say it took a week to incubate, within a week it'd be too late. And this is why I don't foresee us being able to get our ways out of something like this. If this is the demise of our civilization, which I only see it coming two ways, I really don't see a war taking out the world. I just don't think that humanity will be dumb enough, at least at this point, to use nuclear weapons. But it's a possibility. But my thoughts are usually more along the lines of a solar flare or an EMP that takes out the grid, because 3 days without power and it may never come back on. So it would be either that or a virus. And a virus is nature's way of kicking our asses off the planet, if that's what it chooses to do. And this is why I don't believe that humanity is doomed. I don't believe that we've completely failed. Because I think, and this is going out on a limb here, I believe that the Earth has a consciousness. I believe in the Gaia theory, in a way. And I believe that when there's a problem, the Earth will take care of it. And just like your body will fight a virus, with, you know, your cells will kick into action, your immune system will take over. Think of it as the Earth's immune system, and think of a virus as the cleansing agent. So if the Earth really found us to be that detrimental, then we would have probably been gone by now. However, we've been able to kind of fight back against nature by saying, we have had outbreaks, and we've quarantined them and blown them up and burned people and killed people. All kinds of black op weird shit's gone on behind the closed doors. And there have been a lot of close calls. You know, people don't realize how close we really were to nuclear war. But, so here we are, a society of people who all have different ideas about what's important, and now that we're so exposed to each other on the internet, it's become overwhelming to the point where I don't even know if people can really ever pull themselves out of this and get along and start to relate to one another to the point where we can. I'm almost out of time on this video, so I don't want to get cut off. I'm just going to start on the next one. This will be a part 1.